Right, hello everyone, and welcome to our latest ALTA Insights webinar. I'm Jeremy Yohe, ALTA's Vice President of Communications, and thank you for joining us today, taking a little time out of your summer. We have some fabulous experts who are going to share their knowledge to help you, when purchasing new technology. We're going to walk through a buyer's checklist, share some red flags to avoid, and offer some real good examples of successful tech adoption. Before starting, if you've been on our webinars, I have a few housekeeping items to review. A copy of today's presentation can be downloaded from the handout section of the GoToWebinar window pane. The speakers have also provided several other handouts to help with the vetting process, including a request for proposal template, a vendor comparison form, and a vendor questionnaire. Today's webinar is being recorded. You'll get an email with a link to the recording tomorrow. I'll also include links to get the handouts, and you can always access all of ALTA's webinar recordings at alta.org/webinars. If at any time you have a question, pop them in the questions box. We'll hold some time at the end for Q&A at the end of the presentation. I do need to thank Certified for sponsoring today's webinar. And before introducing today's speakers, I have a short commercial from Certified.
The first time I came across Certified is because we at a prior company had an instance of wire fraud, and they jumped in and were so incredibly helpful. I became a lifelong fan at that point in time. Certified has been a huge part in preventing wire fraud and helping us protect our customers over the last 3 years. If I were starting a new title company today, in no world would I consider a technology package that did not include Certified.
All right, well, Certified, thank you for that message. Kind of one point, talking about technology. They're providing the services on preventing wire fraud. Definitely very important. Make sure I have the PowerPoint showing again. All right, there we go. Let me introduce today's speakers. We have, again, three, very experienced people in the title industry, diverse knowledge on, the tech side and, the title company side. First, we have Tony Carroll. Tony is Vice President of Fiduciary Banking at Capital Bank, where she is accountable for the development of new business and increasing the bank's market share. Tony, I can't believe your bio said you have 40 years of industry experience and you've held many roles during your career with many tech vendors. So thank you for joining us. Next, we have Terry Hansen. Terry is CEO and President of VisionX. VisionX provides a suite of closing service solutions. Terry also has served the industry, for many years, 30 years also. Man, I cannot believe this. Working on the underwriter side to working with several tech firms as well. And we also have Andrea Sommers. Andrea is Operations Manager for Florida Agency Network, where she is responsible for formulating strategy, providing leadership, oversight, and management of the company's ancillary division network transaction solutions. And Andrea has nearly 25 years of experience in the title industry. So you all have a lot more experience than I do in the industry, and I thought I was well versed at almost 20 now. So thank you for joining us. Before we jump in, I had a quick poll question that I wanted to pitch to all of you out there. And
Jeremy, we're not seeing the slides.
Just not seeing the slides still? Okay.
Yeah. Technology is always fun.
Better?
There we go.
Okay. All right. All right, there's the slide with their names, contact information, and who they're with and title. So, user error on me, I apologize. Quick poll question, just wanted to see where everyone is at and kind of the purchasing of tech. Are you planning to buy tech in the next year? Pop in your answer real quick and we'll close it and then get to the content. Looks like about 2/3. 63%. Yes, we are looking to make a purchase of technology over the next year. So with that, Tony, people are hungry. They want services and solutions to make their processes maybe more efficient, meet the needs of their clients. So let's get into it.
Will do. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. We're super excited to be here today. I'm with 3 of my most amazing industry friends here, known a very long time. We're going to talk about how to shop for a vendor effectively, right? There's a lot out there. What do you ask? With so many different platforms, apps, tools out there, it's easy to feel so overwhelmed. So having a strategy in place is key, right? It's going to make the most of your time so you're not wasting that time in the resources. And ultimately, you're going to find that right fit for you. I said, I'm lucky to be here with my amazing industry friends, lots of experience here. We all started in kindergarten, right?
Exactly. We're even diapers. We were still diapers, right?
But I mean, Andrew, you vetted so many vendors throughout your career. So you're going to share and align and help everybody today talk about that a little bit. And Terry, you know, you've got a lot of employment history with different vendors over the years. You've been through this process on both sides of the house. So I look forward to hearing you share your stories. And I've worked with multiple different vendors over the years, you know, a whole bunch of different hats, different ways. So just what to avoid, you know, what partnerships I've dealt with and what questions I've been asked. So we are excited to share all of that experience with you here today. You know, from technology solutions to service providers, you know, navigating those different challenges of vendor relationships. You know, you learn valuable lessons as you go through that. One of the biggest challenges we hear from people in our industry is, how do I know this is the right solution for me? You know, it's not just about the features, it's about how it's going to fit into your workflow, your team, how it's going to align with your goals. You know, the truth is the wrong technology can slow you down. Making that wrong decision just will defeat the purpose of implementing it, and then people will get frustrated. That's why having a clear evaluation process is so important, not just to avoid, you know, buyer's remorse, which we've seen. We've all implemented something and never use it, whether it's on your phone or personally, but to set you and your team up for success. So today we want to make sure you're going to walk away with some great tools to use, you know, whether you're thinking about a CRM, a title production product, security tool, or anything in between. We're going to cut through all that red tape and the sales pitches. We're going to help you navigate past that and how to ask the right questions. So I'm going to throw it off to Andrea. She's going to kick things off. She's going to walk us through exactly what we're going to be covering here today.
Yeah, and we'll go back one slide because I just want to go over what we're going to cover in the agenda. And Tony, I mean, you hit it right on the head. There's a lot of vendors out there, and it can get overwhelming. I mean, trying to figure out what tech your business needs, you know, it can be confusing. It certainly can be costly as well. Whether you're looking for title production software or a new CRM, maybe there's security tools you want to look at. ID verification is a big one these days. Or maybe you just need a better way to communicate with your team. Making the right choice is going to be key to running smoothly and growing your business. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to break down how to evaluate and compare the different tech options. We're going to walk you through common red flags to watch out for. So essentially, we're going to start with how to identify your business needs, how to research different vendors. Again, there's a lot of them out there. Key questions that you want to ask vendors so that you know that they align with your goals and everybody's on the same page, right? And then what are the best practices for organizing your takeaways and scheduling follow-ups, and how do you do all of this? What about ongoing strategies for vendor management and the vetting pieces of it? So we're going to cover all of that today. And I think, you know, we will have to start somewhere. So Terry, what is the first thing we want to do when we start thinking about tech? And you know, we've got a large group here that obviously is planning on adding tech in the next year.
Well, thank you. I think the very first thing we need to do, or advice that I would give you, is to not be overwhelmed. This is very overwhelming, especially if you come from a world that's not technology driven, and it just is overwhelming. And I think people would rather just stop and move aside than to actually face it head on. So we'll talk about all the resources that we have available. All the 3 of us are happy to help wherever we can. But I think to begin, the key is not just identifying, but making sure that you understand the needs of your business with respect to technology. Identify the current challenges, list them, and keep that list readily available, because we'll talk about stakeholders in a moment, but we want to have access for everyone to see what it is we're trying to solve for. We also really want to ask the hard questions. We want to ask the hard questions internally before we go externally to get in front of vendors. So do we really truly have a gap? Maybe our tech is just outdated. If that's the case, is there updates available? Are there processes that we have within the organization that are slowing us down that aren't even tech related? If they are tech related, is the tech what is the root of causing those issues? Also, one thing that I see often and have for years is we often have users who will work around the technology that we have. There's a myriad of reasons why they do it, but identify if that's one of the situations that you have within your own organization. Are people really working around the system because they don't want to? As Tony mentioned, maybe it's a service or a vendor that we're working with that may be causing some issues. Maybe our marketing is weak. And then lastly, the other thing that another hard question that we have to answer is it truly a gap, or do we happen to have a squeaky wheel in the office that's complaining and causing disruption amongst other users in the office? So just some questions that you want to ask. I know many of you are familiar with the SMART approach when we come to doing assessment goals for our personnel, but the SMART approach can also be used when we're assessing technology or services or vendor partners. So I'm going to read them because I don't want to mess this up, but be specific, specify specific features and functionality that you need to have within your solution, and what goals each of those specific features and functionality are going to attain for you. As an example, it's very easy to say, our software doesn't work, we need something better. But specifically, what is wrong? For example, is our TPS not integrated with our bank system and it's causing people to go outside of the system, or it's not allowing a smoother process? Maybe it's not secure enough. And is measurable. Can we establish attainable metrics? So as you're doing your assessment, maybe you want to see, I have to have a 95% reduction in some of our security breaches. Put those out there so that you can say, you know what, we need some kind of multi-factor authentication. I need to put a security tool in place, etc. Make sure it's measurable. Also achievable. The resources that you have, and ensure that your assessment goals are realistic given the available resources to you. This is also a prime opportunity for you to have that discussion with the vendor. You can say, listen, this is all great and we definitely want to do it, but I only have X number of people, or I don't have this much time, or we only have this much money to invest in it. Also, as mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that it's relevant to the goals of our company. We'll talk about losing sight of what we're trying to do in a moment, but just making sure that we are aligning the technology assessment and goals to the same goals that we have for our company. And then lastly is time bound. Make sure that you set a timeline. Unfortunately, I have experience with some clients, some title agents who just said, you know what, we need to do this, and then they had to put a time frame on it, and they are still setting a goal or have not implemented or still maybe not even purchased a tool, and at the risk of losing people or business or the frustration that comes with all of that. I also want to share, make sure you prioritize your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves. The shiny object or the latest trend will easily distract us from what we really need to do here. So make sure that you don't lose focus on those tools. 3 very crucial questions that should be asked as you're going through the assessment process. Is this going to save me time? Is it going to save me money? And will it really resolve the issues that we have listed that we prioritized earlier? Also, prioritizing your vendors based on your business goals. There are a handful of vendors that you're going to be communicating with, so make sure that you give priority to those that are going to best suit your needs as you're going through the process. Many new vendors in our space out there on the AI side or otherwise, security, they're all coming out of the woodworks right now, which is good. We need to have the competition, but make sure you're prioritizing those that you want to speak with so that you get in front of them and they can assess your needs and help you get to a solution a little bit more quickly. Moving on, we want to talk about the importance of engaging stakeholders. Andrea, you help me with that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm a big proponent of engaging our stakeholders at every step of this process. And Terry, you were just talking about, you know, assessing your business challenges and gaps. You may see different challenges than what your employees are seeing. They're really the ones on the front line. So, you know, going back to what Terry was just talking about, trying to assess those business challenges and gaps, one good exercise, I've done this with my team many times, we meet and I say, okay, we're going to take a 15-minute coffee break and we're all going to sit down and I have 3 questions and we're going to set a timer. And I want you to jot down what's one thing that's slowing you down, what's one thing you wish you had, and what's one thing that our competitors might be doing better. And, you know, we take that 15 minutes and it always just surprises me what comes out of that. You know, sometimes we find data redundancy or people rekeying things in multiple places. So without their insights, I really would risk, you know, investing in solutions that might miss the mark. So it's just important to engage them. Again, they're on the front line. These are the people that are doing the processes day in and day out. They know what's tripping them up. And when they help shape the solution, they're more invested in using it. So at Network Transaction Solutions and Florida Agency Network, we are always looking for ways to improve and stay ahead. And so we like to think of ourselves as cutting edge, although we joke often that we're bleeding edge because let's be honest, it can be tough sometimes. It can be painful sometimes. So we've had to be really thoughtful in how we approach every process change we make, every tech, every tool that we add, every vendor that we onboard. So we want to make sure that our team members are excited about the change rather than fearing it. And so we involve them early on. We get them involved in the, not just the assessment of where our business challenges are, but then in the planning and decision making wherever possible or wherever we're able to. We definitely have open discussions about upcoming changes. We address their concerns openly. And I really find that this makes my teams and all of our teams feel very included. They feel valued. They feel like their opinion matters. And that in turn, it really gives them some skin in the game. So super, super important. But now that we've identified our pain points, we've engaged our teams to help us identify those. What about the vendors? Now we've got to find vendors or tools to address these problems that we discovered. Tony, what do we do? How do we do that?
I know, it's scary, right? How do we identify those key vendors that are out there? There's so many, right? How are they going to align with your business goals? But once you've identified those needs, as Andrea was saying, you know, the next step is to research and what can solve those problems. And, you know, maybe you don't have a problem. You know, sometimes you don't know the functionality of your current systems and you can solve it utilizing your current systems. So I would always check in with your current provider. If it's not doing what you think it should be doing, ask them first before you make that decision, because it could be doing that. But once you find that short list and the vendors that will align with your goals, you want to look to see, you know, are you looking to enhance security and fraud? Is that what you're looking for? Are you looking to streamline, you know, your operations, your core operations, maybe with a new title production system to, you know, to improve efficiency, or maybe you're exploring remote online notarization. That could be a solution. You want to make things easier for your people coming in for closings and not have to drive to the office in traffic. I think that's, you know, a great thing we can do, and they can sign documents with a glass of wine in their hands. Or maybe your banking relationship isn't working for you. You know, maybe you're paying fees and maybe they don't understand your business. That's so much of what you're looking for in a vendor is, do they understand our business? Because so many people don't, you know, they don't realize what we actually do. You know, maybe we're seeing so much AI in our industry, and maybe that's a solution you're looking for, or a CRM or closing solutions. These are just all, you know, all different products that are out there. And how are you going to find the vendors for all of this? Marketing, do you need a marketing vendor, a CRM? But it's really important to do your research for these particular vendors, right? Go beyond that marketing brochure. Don't rely on that marketing brochure. Check their websites. See what's on their website, see what information's there. Is it easy to read? If you're going to look for a marketing solution and the website's not very good, that might be something to consider. Reviews. We all ask for them in our day-to-day operations. Ask for reviews. Find testimonials. Those are all things that are going to help you get real-life scenarios to see if that vendor does meet what they say. They put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, right? Get the good, bad, and the ugly, because, you know, rather have that up front than have to find it out way down the road. You know, reach out to colleagues, employees. They may have experience at another company. Andrea mentioned your stakeholders. Your agency representatives are also a great resource for you. They may have experience what their other agents have seen in it, so they can give you a vanilla flavor on what that product and that service. Unsolicited. Reach out to, you know, other people in the industry. There's a lot of, we'll talk about this a little bit later, there's Facebook pages that you can go and talk about that vendor that are providing their insights. You can ask questions. Have you worked with them before, and get live experiences with them. Also, you know, our partner, the American Land Title Association, Alto's website, they've got a section for industry partners. And Jeremy, you want to tell us a little bit about what's there?
Yeah, let me pop on here real quick. Yeah, the ALTA marketplace is it's been evolving and growing, and more agents are going to it as a resource to find vendors for whatever different types of technologies that they're looking for. Many that you all have already mentioned, whether it's a title protection software, a CRM, AI products. There are a lot of different vendors listed there. As I mentioned, it has evolved over time, and the ALTA's information security work group is going to start digging into it and reviewing the marketplace to make some improvements to make it a little easier for agents to find vendors. And some of the things they're looking at are reviewing the product categories, updating the feature and functionality checkboxes, and adding a requirement that vendors share a short text description, indicating how they meet the feature functionality that the agent is going to be looking for in their operation. So hopefully that streamlines it and helps agents who go there, find the vendors that are more specific to their needs.
Very great points, thanks. Also check your underwriter websites, because they also have some marketplaces and preferred vendors there as well. And just doing your homework ahead of time is going to save you so much time and hours in doing demos and all the things. You do all that research ahead of time so that you're ready and prepared as you're starting to take the next steps. So next steps would be asking those different questions. Terry, you want to take it away with some questions we should ask those vendors?
Absolutely. So you can see some of the questions listed here, but just to add a little color to this, you really want to listen to the responses that are provided and document those. So again, as you go back to the stakeholders, many of you will meet these vendors when you're at a conference or a webinar or something like that, and not all of your stakeholders are present. So you want to make sure that you document everything so that you can revisit, especially when we get to the evaluation stage. If the solution that they are discussing with you or presenting to you does not meet your needs, it's not even a part of the problem that you're trying to assess, kindly terminate the conversation and move on, because all they're going to do is talk to you about something that you don't even really need at this time, maybe sometime in the future, but not at this time. So don't get bogged down and lose sight and get distracted by that, because that happens very easily. Make sure that you understand, or excuse me, make sure the vendor understands what you're trying to solve for. When you're having a communication or when you're open communication with them, they should be answering questions that you have and how their solution is going to solve your problem. It's very easy for us to come in and say, oh, we do everything all the time and we're amazing, right? Anybody can say that, but they should tell you specifically how they're going to help you. And if they're not the solution for you, they should tell you they're not a solution for you. Vendors don't love to have that conversation, but it's an honest one that should be had. Make sure that you understand what they're explaining to you, and if you don't, keep asking questions. There are so many acronyms and so much that we talk about as vendors of technology that, if they're sending or throwing alphabet soup at you and you don't know what they're even referring to, stop them, ask them to explain. That's your right to understand all of that. With regards to competitors, we as vendors pretty much know who all of our competitors are. And so asking us or any vendor who our competitors are should not be an opportunity for us to brag about, oh, we're better than them, or we can do X, Y, and Z. It should be, here's how we can solve their issue. They may be able to do it, but here's how we're going to help you with that, right? So they should also give you a list of who their competitors are. So as you're going through your assessment, you can say, oh, I need to talk to this one, or I've heard their name before, etc. When they're talking to you about the competitors, the things that should come front to mind are truly, is it not only just solving the issue you have, but will it make you more, is it going to be more cost effective? Is it going to make your process more efficient? Is their solution scalable? Are they going to be able to grow with you? Response time and support is a big deal for vendors, especially in our space. So asking that and making sure that they go through that with you. The next one is the implementation and the process for implementation and the timeline. This is very sticky for vendors. Of course, we all want to say, oh, we can get you up and running in a very timely fashion, no problem. Or they could say, well, it all depends. Both of those are pretty honest answers because it does depend. There's so many variables that go into the implementation process, but as you're communicating with them, given the information that you've provided, they should be able to give you a high level of what that's going to be. If you say, I have X number of users or in this many states, or here's what my client base looks like, they should be able to give you a pretty accurate timeline of what the implementation and process would be, how long the onboarding is, who you're going to be communicating with over time. With regards to your case studies and references, Tony mentioned this earlier. Case studies are a great place to start, especially if you're looking at somebody's website, because that helps you to identify who their target market is. Oftentimes as vendors, if we are trying to hit, hey, we really want to focus on this type of title agent, or one that has this kind of exposure, or this one that works with these kinds of clients, we'll put those in our studies. So you'll see that on there. Also, when it comes to references, when you ask them, make sure that they're giving you references that equate to what your own situation is. If you are a smaller site only working in your state, getting references that have a national footprint that are, dabbling in international business is not going to be helpful. So make sure that they provide you with references that are going to be more helpful in your overall assessment. And then the last question I have here on this slide is the total cost of ownership. This is a big piece of it. Of course, they might say, oh, here's what a license cost or a subscription cost, or this is how much it is over time. There are other questions that should be asked here. You need to ask if there are minimums or any kind of volume commitment in order to meet those price guidelines. Are they providing you an all-inclusive list of fees? Is there anything additional for integrations or setup or implementation? Do they charge for forms and documents? Oftentimes your support fees are based on tier levels, so make sure that they're quoting you on, this is what the support tiers are. Find out if you're going to be locked into a contract. Oftentimes we at least have an annual, but are there is there a point at which there could be some negotiation in that contract? So for example, when you're building and you're growing, is there some negotiation there? Typically there is. Also, as Tony mentioned, when you're working with your underwriters, often there is some, incentives when you're working with the underwriters that way. And then if we don't fall in love with the product, what are our options to get out of the contract, or basically what's the return policy that they have? Because not everybody loves everybody. And so you need to know what your options are to back out of that same situation. And then lastly, how are upgrades, how do they work? Is there a cost for that? Are they on a timely manner? Is it, oh my gosh, the world just crashed and now we need to get an update? Make sure you understand the update process, and again, the cost, if there are any associated with those. So as any wise person would say to you, read the fine print. It's very easy to gloss over the fine print, but is usually the most important part. So make sure that you understand pre-signing of a contract what that fine print reads and what your options are to get in and out of it. So that's a lot of questions. I think we have more. Andrea, do you have some more questions you'd like to cover?
We do. Listen, you've got to ask these questions. How are you going to know how this vendor is going to fit with you unless you start asking these questions? So yeah, we've got more. Another good one is, what does the support look like, right? I mean, I say this because so many of us often miss this when we're evaluating tech. The tech sounds great, looks like it's going to meet our needs, and we really have no idea what the support looks like. So it's really crucial to look into that. You want reliable customer service or support from your vendor. And a lot of us will neglect this aspect up until we actually face the tech issue. And then we realize, oh no, our tech partners support team is not responsive or they're unhelpful. And so we don't want to be in that boat. So before committing, ask questions about their support. I would even take it a step further and engage with that customer support through the various channels that they may have, phone, email, live chat, whatever it may be, but gauge their responsiveness and their helpfulness. And then I would ensure that you have 24/7 support if it's necessary for the tool that you're looking at. So find out their hours of operation. Sometimes they're in another state, so the hours might be different. But you'll want to know that up front. You don't want to get to the end and have an issue and then start finding out that the support isn't helpful. Another great question to ask is, does your underwriter have a relationship with this vendor? Ask your underwriters, whether you work with one or multiple underwriters, ask if they have an existing relationship with the tech vendor that you're considering. A lot of underwriters partner with preferred vendors, and they may offer discounted pricing or special packages or added support to their agents as just part of those relationships. So it's a simple question, but it can lead to significant cost savings or added value or both. So definitely ask that. What about the security features of the tech? Ask about those. Security is paramount in our industry, and a lot of us may forget to really fully assess how secure that vendor is, their platform, or that tech is. And that can get us in a sticky situation. Weak security protocols can lead to data breaches, can lead to unauthorized access, something none of us want. So really ask questions to get informed about what those security features are of the vendor you're looking at, including encryption methods, identity verification procedures, if that's part of it or if that fits, multi-factor authentication, and then make sure that they comply with industry standards for securing NPPI or non-public personal information. Any vendor that we use is going to be an extension of us. So, however weak their protocols are, makes you that weak. So, and in the case of an audit, every vendor we use directly reflects on us. So it's really just an extended piece of us. So ask about that. Are they licensed and compliant with state and federal regulations? Is this somebody that you're going to be sharing sensitive NPI with or running it through this tech in some way? And if so, you need to ensure that they're protecting it to the same extent that you do. So have them provide documentation about that for you to review. Another great question is, how long have they been in business, and are they really familiar with our industry? Ask them the question, how long have you been in business? It's a critical question to ask to gauge just their stability and their reliability. I love to ask what their experience is in the title industry. I love to work with vendors who understand our industry. You know, the ones that understand title and settlement, they will speak our language. You know, they're going to know the regulatory requirements, the workflow nuances that we have, and the compliance concerns that we have. They'll understand the things specific to our world. So you're not going to be constantly explaining how your business works. A vendor with knowledge in the industry means they're going to understand the urgency behind issues like delays in closings or document errors, things like that, and they'll be able to respond accordingly. Also, I would ask, does the tool integrate with your current system or your software? You know, tools that integrate with your existing system, obviously it minimizes errors, it can speed up your workflow, just streamline things a lot better. But don't just stop at, they say yes, and you say, check, okay, it integrates, and move on. Really look at the integration, you know, demo it. How does it work? Ask the questions, get really involved in it, because you may find, and I see this a lot with integration, maybe it pushes information one way, but then doesn't automate the information back. So these are just things you're going to want to understand with the integration. Are there limitations with it, and those types of things? So those are just, you know, between Terry and I think we covered the key questions that you're going to want to ask vendors. But then it gets into vetting vendors. We've asked a lot of questions, but now we've really got to vet them too. Tony, what's entailed? How do we do that?
You know, that's a good question, Andrea. You guys presented some amazing questions that our audience here can go and ask their vendors. But now what's next? So once you narrow down your options, it's time to dig deeper, you know, vet each vendor thoroughly. This is where you want to go beyond the sales pitch and make sure that the solution is going to work for your business, because they may present it one way and it may not. So what you want to do is make sure you're going to compare, right? Compare solutions. You're going to compare them based on functionality, pricing, support, because not all solutions are created equal. And they may not all work with your specific needs that you identified earlier today. You know, if you're looking for a fraud solution, what is their insurance coverage? You know, each one may have a different policy that's in place. If you're looking at a title production software, make sure you're comparing apples to apples. You know, I've worked and I've seen every one of them, and they all do something a little bit different. But what's important to you? Is reporting important to you? Is the escrow account important to you? Or integration, what is important to you? And you want to make sure that you're comparing them all apples to apples. You know, is it web-based? Is it a locally installed product? Is it an a la carte solution? Do you have to pay for all the things that are involved in it? Is it transactional? So you want to make sure that you're finding each solution, and part of the documents that we've provided is the ability that can do a comparison sheet for you. So that's attached for your reference as well. You know, the other thing too is how responsive are they in that sales process? You know, are they responding to you? Because if they're not responding to you to get the sale, that's probably going to be how they continue the relationship with you. What is their support model? We've talked a little bit about this before. You know, are you getting a dedicated person, or you're just going into a queue and having to wait for somebody to get back to you? Request live demos. Always get a demo. You know, make sure you can ask questions, make sure it's going to fit, and don't just stop there. See if they have an actual sandbox that you can go into, or a trial version that you can install on your systems. You want to make sure that the system feels is going to work with your specific needs. So the demo is important. Have questions prepared. What's going to be important to you, as we identified earlier, and be ready to ask those questions and let them demonstrate it while they're on the phone. If it's that reporting, maybe you want pie charts and graphs. Are you able to do that? Do you have a dashboard? Whatever it may be, make sure you're having those questions answered and you're seeing what that looks like. We've talked about this a couple times, Andrea and Terry, both, do they integrate with your current system? If you're taking a look at an e-recording platform, is the data points going to pull from a title production system to the e-recording platform? And then once that's recorded, is it going to come back in and populate back into your title production system? So make sure that those integrations there for any other services you may have in place today. Whether it's on your banking side, you want to make sure that the bank is integrating maybe with a reconciliation service, an order auto clear, or positive pay, whatever it may be. And then, evaluate being scalable. What happens if you want to grow your business? You want to get into other states? Do you want to get into other areas of work, not just commercial, but maybe you're going to move into residential, move into, is that product going to work for all aspects of your business? Maybe you're doing 1031s. Whatever your business type is it going to scale to it if you decide to add those services down the road? Also, right, we're in our business is up and down all the time. We're on a roller coaster. Is it going to be scalable for what you're going to do that way? If it's license-based and you get slower, can you reduce licenses? Or do you have to wait to the beginning of your next contract? Do they require minimums? If there's minimums involved, if you don't meet them, what is the recourse there? Can we go a different direction? If you cancel files, what's the solution there? Do we have to still pay for that? There's so many questions that you want to make sure that you're considering as you're looking for that product based on your business type and what your future, what is the future of your company holds, and make sure you're including that when you're doing this vetting process. And then review the contract. Andrea actually brought this up. It's a really good point, is ask for the contract ahead of time before you start those negotiations, because there may be something in that contract that doesn't meet your business model. So ask for it ahead of time, come up with red line, for that contract. Is it something that can be negotiated? Because if not, you may stop that relationship right then and there. But know what the terms are before you get to that place. And if they're willing to negotiate on those contract terms. Also, is it all to best practices compliant? You want to make sure that it's going to meet all of our industry standards. So when you're making a big technology decision, especially one that's going to involve multiple stakeholders or a big investment, you want to make sure that you're taking those necessary steps. And one of those steps may be something a little bit more formal. You might want to request an RFP, again, back to your acronyms, Terry, request for proposal from the vendor. And Terry, you've done this before. You've responded to RFPs. You've done all this. Can you share what the benefits of doing an RFP and why we'd want to do that?
Absolutely. So the benefits is we now have a document in place that we can take all of the information that's been shared with you so far and kind of centralize it and organize it. So you typically don't want to do an RFP. RFP just stands for request for proposal. It's also called an RFI, which is just request for information. Same, they're exactly the same.
Well, let's go one more slide too. Yeah. I was just thinking.
Oh, sorry, one more slide. Maybe.
All right.
One more slide.
One more slide. Yes, sir.
There we go.
So here's the definition of what an RFP is, again, also known as an RFI. You typically don't want to do this until you've narrowed down your search to less than a half a dozen, because you are truly doing a side-by-side comparison at this point. We have some as handouts here, just as an example. Anybody could go do a web search and find some. I personally think that this is a great time for you to dabble in AI if you are so brave to do that. AI can help you build an RFP that's very specific to your needs. Maybe use the template that we have to get you started, and then go ask AI some different questions or things that you feel are, super important to you to have that done. On your RFP, make sure that you are also documenting the date at which you sent this and telling whichever vendor you're sending it to when you must have it back. As we've mentioned a handful of times, if they're not communicating with you and they can't get you an RFP back in a timely fashion, maybe they don't need the business, and is this a company you want to be working with if they're not being responsive? Once you have all of the RFP, you've got your template done, you've sent it, you've got everything back, my recommendation is to put it on a whiteboard or a shared document, depending on where your stakeholders are. If you are so blessed that everybody's in the same room and you can look at it together, it's awesome to have it on a whiteboard and be able to do that. But otherwise, have a shared document where you truly are comparing, as was mentioned in Tony's slide, comparing all of the you're comparing apples to apples. Compare the functionality, the features, the pricing, the support, all the things that we've talked about. Make sure you have a column for those. It's not just a checkbox. It really is, how did the support hours vary? How do the pricing vary? And have that conversation. It's been mentioned a couple of times, and I want to add for scheduling demos, if they're giving you a PowerPoint presentation to showcase their product, that's a red flag. You definitely need to see it in action. I will speak from my perspective as a vendor. The scariest thing to do is a demo live because, things can happen. We have electricity, something, or, people are, sneezing or something happens, but that product is working and that it's working well if they can give you a live demo and showcase all of the parts of it. Maybe a new term that's available that maybe you are all not familiar with is a sandbox. A sandbox is just a login to a tool that you can go in and play with the technology that you're evaluating. Not all solutions are created equally. Not all demos are created equally. We might think that we know what you're trying to do, but until you get your hands dirty, which a lot of people are hands-on, and this is the best assessment, it's priceless to allow your stakeholders to, get their hands in and play in the sandbox. It's just, I have just kind of a repeat, but I'm going to hit on these a little bit harder. Make sure that you are documenting the integrations and the timeline that the integrations are going to be available. Everybody's like, yeah, we're working with X, Y, and Z, but does that mean it's going to be done at the end of this year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the situation is? Again, just for a true comparison. And then I think the ladies have hit on everything else with compliance, security, and our scalability. So best practices for going through the process.
Yeah, and I'm just going to run through this quickly because we've really already covered it, and I know we're getting close to time. But just these are going to be the best practices. I love the suggestion from Terry using AI to create your RFP. It really will create one for you that's specific, but just make sure that it has these best practices within it, as far as defining clearly what you're looking for. Your requirements are going to be the blueprint for what you're actually looking for. So if the vendors don't know exactly what you're specifically needing, they're not going to know if they can meet those needs, or they can't show you how they can meet those needs. So this will make sure vendors who are not a good match, you're not wasting time on demos or negotiations. And then, Terry covered this, but get those detailed proposals, make sure it includes pricing, timelines, and support terms. Timelines are going to give you a realistic view of how long that implementation process is. And then standardize the evaluation criteria. So that's where both Terry and Tony were talking about. Vendors are going to present their solutions different ways. And so when you have that standard RFP, you're able to compare apples to apples. You can really look at each vendor and see exactly what they're presenting to you. So, and then remember, engage your stakeholders early on. But Tony, why don't we go through the 5 RFP steps?
Let's do it. And I will also say I've used Canva to get an RFP. That's worked out pretty well. If anybody hasn't used that before. I think one of the formats I provided to you is from there. Like you said, Andrea, step 1, we did this way back in the beginning of the presentation. Identify those stakeholders. You want to make sure that you're including them early in those discussions, keep them involved. Anybody that's going to be impacted making those decisions should have a voice early on. We can't reiterate that enough. I've gone to so many offices where we've installed software or we've installed a product and nobody wants to use it because they were not part of the decision. They're like, nobody asked me. So if they're involved, they cannot say that.
Exactly.
Second part, create that project plan and scope. Define what you are solving, right? We talked about that earlier. What are you solving for? If you don't know that ahead of time, then you won't know how the right questions to ask. Get a clear scope. That's going to ensure everybody is on the same page. Then you're going to prepare that RFP document. Again, back to the request for proposal. Clearly define your business needs there, your objectives, what your required features are, and what your must-haves as far as integrations go. Set your security expectations in that document, timelines, implementations, and you want to keep it focused on your needs, right? We can all get squirrel, or that's just me, but we can all get squirrel, and we may have other things on our wish list, but we don't want to include that there because we really want to be able to solve the need we identified early on. And then review and evaluate those responses. Sit down, look at them, compare everything based on what you've provided to them, ease of use, support, pricing. Do an apples to apples comparison of the vendors that you just picked, because you want to make sure it's not just the flashiest demo that you're picking, but the one that's going to identify with you the best. We just went in and we had somebody come in and give us a price for a deck, and we had 4 people come in, and one's like, you got to come to the office. This one's like, I won't give you a quote unless you come to our place. And then the one guy was just like, nailed everything we wanted right off the top of our list, and we were like, yep, that's the guy. So you know internally when you find that right solution. And then finally, you're going to do that contract negotiation. So once you narrow down all the different vendors and it's time to make the contract negotiation, make sure it reflects everything that you've discussed, especially around service levels, pricing, exit clauses, everything that we've talked about here today. The goal is to find somebody that's going to be your partner and that protects you now and in the future, and he's going to be along with you for that entire ride, not just once that sale is done, I'm out. So you might want to just go through all of this with each different vendor, and if the answer is no on any particular one of them, then you know they're not the right solution for you. Well, guys, now that all the hard work's done, we've identified their needs, we've vetted the vendors, we've gone through RFP or maybe not gone through RFP. This is really just beginning. Can you talk to us about some ongoing strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one we've listed on here, set expectations with SLAs. So consider having an SLA. It's a service level agreement. That's a formal document between you and the provider. And it really goes, it's going to define the specific services that provider is delivering to you, along with the standards of performance metrics and timeline metrics that they have to meet. So, having this in place with your vendors is going to give you leverage if promises end up not getting kept. Scheduling for regular performance reviews is super important. One thing I do with my team regularly is I have a spreadsheet with our vendors, and I pass that out to everyone and say, all right, here's all the vendors we're using, what's working and what's not. And their firsthand feedback really helps me evaluate our vendors' performances. It helps me catch issues early and make sure I'm still, helps me ensure that the solution that we put in place is still meeting our needs. So get that feedback. What about maintaining open communication, Terry?
Yeah, this is key. It's fair to the vendor that you notify them immediately if something's not going as well as you had anticipated. Give them a moment to respond to that as well. As you have that open communication, it could be with anyone. Maybe you are talking back to your salesperson. Maybe you are speaking to the onboarding team or support, depending on when this happens. But just make sure that you have that constant communication with them throughout the process. There is not any vendor that wants to be surprised and know that they lost somebody because of something that could have been resolved, right? That is painful. It's very, very painful. So make sure that you're communicating with them at all times. And then we talked about renegotiating our contract. So that can be done many, many times, but make sure you're setting a reminder. I know many of you have a legal team that have this reminder. There's a ton of tools out there. As your business is growing, as you come up to deadlines of the contract, now's your opportunity to renegotiate, maybe better pricing, maybe better turn times. There's a myriad, right? So that's a lot. We have covered a lot.
Take a breath, take a breath.
Yes.
Time to recap, right?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Penny.
Well, before we totally wrap up, guys, let's just hit some key takeaways. It's not always about the pricing. You know, the cheapest option may not be the best option. It may not fit your business needs. So don't always look at that bottom line pricing, especially if you're comparing apple to apples. Responsiveness, how quickly vendors are responding during that process. We talked about that. Researching those vendors to find, do your homework, research them thoroughly to make sure they're going to miss your business needs. And, you know, just don't take the sales pitch that's coming from a salesperson. You know, vet them, make sure they're who they are, right? Take notes, follow-ups, vet that product thoroughly, so you're making those decisions based on facts. Facts, my friend always tells me, facts are your friends. And we've provided those checklists for you there. Use structured processing for evaluation, you know, whether you use an RFP or not. You don't absolutely need an RFP. I didn't mention this before, but Andrea had also provided a simple format that they've used before. You don't need, it's not required. It's really based on what your needs are. And then manage that relationship down, you know, as you're going through that process. After you install, after you implement, keep maintaining that relationship. They should be your partner, and not just abandon you at that point. But we did provide you with lots and lots of information. We appreciate you joining us here today, and hope you leave with some practical tools for your next vendor. And Jeremy, we're going to open it up to some questions if there is any.
We are, but first, wow, that was fantastic. And I think everyone on the call has a great blueprint of all the things you provided. The title companies should consider, you know, from the questions to ask, the vetting, to the request for proposal and the service level agreements. I mean, it's kind of a soup to nuts, kind of like, here you go. It sounds a lot like dating, honestly, though.
It is. And I mean, there absolutely is. We got to weed the rotten apples out, right?
You do. As we mentioned, we got a few minutes for questions. So anyone on the call have a question you want me to pitch to the panelists, you know, now's the time. We have, again, only have a few more minutes. I had a quick question on the RFPs, you know, Tony. So you get a great RFP together. How do you get it into the hand of the vendors? What do you do with it? How do you get it to the companies that, you know, provide those services? Are there places you post it, or do you email your list, or, you know, what do you do?
Great question, Jeremy. So for me, I would get emails. So when I would get an RFP, it would just come in an email form. Whether you create it, maybe you use Adobe and you make it a fillable form that you can send out to them. If it's got NPI, definitely want to consider sharing that securely, as we don't want our NPI to get out there if they're going to be providing any personal information on that. But I think I've seen, and Terry and Andrea, I'd love your feedback, if you've seen any other format besides email.
Yeah, typically I email them to the vendors that I'm looking at that I want to vet and learn more about.
Agreed.
And you know, we've had this conversation for the past few years, and I think Andrea and Tony, you gave a different version of this at Alta Edge in March. And agents come up to me at our events, and smaller agents, and they feel that they're priced out of some of these solutions. They think they're fabulous solutions, but they don't have the volume. You know, great question to ask, vetting. You know, but what can we say? What can we do for a smaller agent that doesn't think maybe that they have the resources to get, you know, some of these technologies that are very vital and important?
Did you want to take that?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great question. I think that's where it comes down to research, because not every vendor is going to have monthly minimums or these massive implementation fees. It really just depends. And that's where the RFP comes in, especially for a small agent, because they can really look at, okay, here are the fees up front versus these fees up front versus no fees up front and so forth. Because it may seem like that it's just costly and expensive, but there are a lot of vendors that I work with and talk to that don't have a huge cost up front and will go, they do tiered level pricing, so it's going to be based on your volume. So yeah, again, just research.
So ask question, just say, you know what, I'm a small business. This is not within my budget. Do you have a different type of plan? Some vendors will. And then also check with your underwriter to see if they have any relationships with that particular provider. They may have discounted rates too.
Yeah, and who knows where that may take you if you get that technology at a lower rate, and you may be able to use it to grow your business. So,
yeah, you want to work on your business, not in your business.
Yes.
All right. Well, again, this was fantastic. If you missed part of today's webinar, or if you think others in your office would benefit from listening, a recording of the presentation will be available tomorrow on Alta's website at alta.org/webinars. And you also get an email tomorrow with a link to the recording as well as the handouts. Quick note, I do want to share that Alta's Best Practices Executive Committee and Work Group are developing some guidance to help members vet tech vendors. Very similar content you all heard here today, but put together in a nice package as well. So keep an eye out for that product. Lots of things happening for agents in making their tech decisions. I do need to thank Certified once again for sponsoring today's webinar, and that will bring us to the close of today's presentation. Thank you all for taking your time and sharing your expertise. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, ladies.
Bye, ladies.